Preparation for the U.S. National Bonsai Exhibition usually starts a good 6 months or so before the show. So that means getting trees prepared basically in the spring prior to the show being held in September up in Rochester, New York. So this year I knew we were going to have a ton of trees going on display. As a matter of fact, altogether it's going to end up being basically 22 trees that we take up. So that required us to have a lot of foresight and preparation going on in the early part of spring in 2023 to make sure that everything was set up properly and in good health and in the right pots with the right stands and everything for the show in the late summer going into early fall. A vast majority of the trees that we're putting into the show this year are plants that I've been maintaining here at my nursery for a number of years. Some of these are trees that I've built essentially from scratch myself here, and many of these trees are students' trees that we maintain here for those intensive students throughout the year. So we've been working on a lot of these trees together in those classes, again with the intention of putting them into this exhibition. And as a matter of fact, that was one of the goals that I had initially set up with the students when we started this program all the way back in 2018, was to eventually build some of these trees out to such a degree that they would be good enough quality to go in our U.S. National Bonsai Exhibition. So several years later, it feels really good to have many of those trees reaching peak form and being able to take those up to Rochester.
You here to help me? You gonna help me out?
长出来仔，OK 哈，哎呦，我看呐，好好，再来。
In preparation for the exhibition, about 4 to 6 weeks out from the show, I like to go ahead and moss all of the trees that are going to go on display. This gives that moss enough time to grow, fill in a little bit, and look a little more naturalistic, rather than putting it on right before the show where it still looks kind of piecemeal. So putting on the moss is certainly an art in and of itself, using different species of moss, utilizing things like lichen, for example, close to the base of the tree to create a bit more of an effect that the tree might have nabari kind of poking up in between the pieces of green moss. All of this has to be taken into consideration in preparation for the show. In addition to that, I really like to style a lot of the trees going in the show, especially the conifers, several months before the show starts. This gives the tree time, again, to sort of settle into place, for the branches to look a bit more naturalistic, and for the wire to oxidize a little bit and be less apparent on the branches of the tree. So this particular plant here is an RAF dwarf Scots pine that I've been building out here at the nursery for the last basically 5 years at this point. It was originally sourced from Bill Valbanis, who actually is the host and the organizer for the national show. It then went to the private collection of Harvey Carapella up in Rochester decades ago, and he maintained it for about a 30 to 40 year period. So he contacted me a few years ago, asked if I would bring it down to my nursery here and rebuild the tree and then put it on sale here at the garden. So through that whole process, we were able to build out a really quality, beautiful tree, and it was then purchased by a local bonsai aficionado here in Nashville named Michael Kidder. So I'm very excited to be taking this tree up to the show. I think it's going to do very well in the exhibition. Of the 22 displays that I'll be taking up to the exhibition, about half of them are deciduous trees and half of them are coniferous plants. So we've got a really good mix of species, good mix of sizes as well, although a majority of these trees are in fact large plants. Now that being said, 2 of the plants that I am taking up are medium-sized plants, both of which have been part of my private collection for a number of years. Of course, this is the Japanese maple clump that I put together over 20 years ago from seedlings in a workshop, again with Bill Valbanis in Tennessee when I was a kid. And this other tree here is a Chinese quince that I've built out essentially from scratch, from a stump over the last 15 years. So in preparation for our move to Japan next year, these 2 trees have actually already been sold, but the buyers of the trees have agreed to allow me to put them on exhibition under my name for the first and last time before they move on to their new owners. So very excited to see the setup of these trees in the exhibition hall in Rochester. Now, over the last couple days here at the nursery, I've had several students here helping me out, getting the trees fully dialed in, last little bit of moss replaced, some of the dead foliage taken off the plants, and of course, the pots oiled up with camellia oil. And they actually helped me load the trees into the truck as well. So couldn't have done any of that without their help. So big shout out to all those guys and gals who came over to help me out with that project. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the behind the scenes aspect of setting up the US National Show, all of the trees are brought up in the 2 or 3 days leading up to the opening event. And the trees are actually photographed by Joe Noga, who is originally from Rochester, New York, but has been living down in North Carolina for the last few years. Joe travels back up to Rochester, takes exquisite photos of all of the bonsai, and all of these are going to be featured in the upcoming photo album of the show. So for me this year, I was able to arrive just a little bit early, and it was great to hang out with Joe and actually get a little bit of a tutorial working with him, actually photographing the trees that I brought up. Joe actually allowed me to click the button a few times and get some really nice shots of our trees. So he's very meticulous about how the lighting is set up. It's really interesting to sit alongside him and study how he does this, because just small shifts in the way that the light actually sort of cuts across certain aspects and elements of the tree will make the layers, for example, pop a bit more, or to make a feature in the trunk stand out a little bit more, even if just subtly, but overall it makes a massive difference. And of course, the show would not be possible at all without Bill Valvanis, who is the founder and operator of the exhibition. Bill has a massive team of volunteers who come out and help him set up all of the displays, help move the trees for photographing, help water the trees throughout the exhibition. So a big shout out to Bill and everybody who was there volunteering and helping out for the show.
I'm Bill Valvanis, and I organized this exhibition. It's the 8th United States National Bonsai Exhibition. There are trees here from all over the country, from Portland, Seattle, Miami, Northwest, and Northeast. Here you can see 109 different species. That's quite a bit. And there's 304 trees. Each one brings their best. So there's a tree from Canada, brought it here, and he picks it up. Looks like a tree hanging on a cliff. There you can see the waterfall. But each individual artist brings their trees, and we combine them, make them look good together. We also have demonstrations here too.
So for the last few years at the US National Exhibition, a good friend of mine and bonsai professional, Suthin Sukoso from up in the Boston area, has been winning the top award at the show. And my goal this year was, if possible, to knock him off of his throne. And we were actually able to do that with that big RAF dwarf Scots pine that's owned by Michael Kidder here at my nursery, but that I've been building out over the last few years. So it was kind of a bittersweet thing to win this award at what will be essentially my last US National Exhibition as a professional living and working in the United States. Because again, we're moving back to Japan next year and setting up a brand new nursery there. So it felt really good to win that award. Suthin was a great sport about it. And again, shout out to Michael Kidder, the owner of the tree. We brought the tree back here to Eisei-en, and we're going to be delivering it to his garden in the next few months and getting it set up there. But it was a fantastic feeling to win that award with him and take the top award at the U.S. National in 2023. Now, while this will be my last U.S. National as a participating professional living and working here in the United States, I will be back for future shows, so I'm looking forward to seeing all of you guys there in 2025. And in the interim as well, I plan on coming out to the Pacific Bonsai Expo next year. So we're gonna have kind of an East Coast, West Coast rivalry, if you will, going every other year from one coast to another. So I look forward to seeing all of you guys at all of these future events, and thank you so much for watching this episode.